Good afternoon. Hey, welcome to the Entrepreneurship Forum. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Richard Jaffe. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, but he says he's not a scratch golfer anymore, but he's becoming a better fly fisherman. So those are good things. And he's a radiologist and a published author from Augusta, Georgia. He graduated from the University of Washington, which is on the other side of the country from Georgia. And he did his internship at Yale, and he completed a residency at the University of Washington Hospital. He has held positions in the United States Public Health Service, Bethesda, Maryland, along with positions at the University of Utah Medical Center. He spent time abroad lecturing for the University of Washington, at the University of Malaya, Kuala Lampur, Malaysia-China Medical Board, and he is an accomplished educator with a primary responsibility for teaching pediatric and adult cardiovascular radiology to residents and cardiac fellows. And I put down here on the notes that he was an accomplished fisherman, skier, and he says he's not a scratch golfer anymore, but that's okay. And so I'm going to turn the time over to, I consider one of my good friends, Dick Jaffe.
Most of what he said is true, but he neglected to mention that I'm retired, which is the best kind of physician to be. Sitting in the back is my close friend Mike Edson, who I work with, has been a good friend since 1973, is also a radiologist. Mike's going to coach me and make sure that I touch on just the high points and hopefully some suggestions. So this is my, I think probably 7th or 8th talk to this audience, and by far and away the largest of the groups. Most have been anywhere from about 15 to 20. So my talk is divided into 2 parts. First of all, Rick asked me to describe to you opportunities in the field of medicine and paramedically related opportunities that least relate to radiology, in other words, like ultrasound, etc. And then the second part, which is where I'd like to focus, is on how you can get to where you want to be, whether it's in the paramedically related fields, medicine, or whatever field that you choose. And for my sources of reference, I've utilized my personal experience of others. I've talked to my 2 sons, one a baseball writer for Sports Illustrated and the other an investment banker, graduate of School of Business, who works as an investment banker out of Seattle, who's provided some help. So with that in mind, let's start at the top. How do you become a physician, in this case a radiologist? What do you need? You need a college degree, preferably a Bachelor of Science. In the olden days, you could get through in 4 years. It's near impossible now to get through college in 4 years, so I've put 4 to 5 years. You need to pass the medical college aptitude test, 4 years to go to medical school. Some spend another year in research. You want to become a radiologist, 4 years for diagnostic radiology and subspecialty training. In this case, I've listed for pediatric radiology, but it could be musculoskeletal work, it could be women's imaging, it could be interventional, which we'll talk about. And then to practice, and I'm talking about pediatric radiology, you generally need to be with a university-affiliated children's hospital, which plus minus always is generally in a large city. If you envision yourself working out of a small town, perhaps Tooele, and we're not picking on Tooele, but you're not going to find a children's hospital there. You'll find just a general hospital, and there's probably little room or opportunity for you there as a pediatric radiologist. There are opportunities, as we'll talk about elsewhere. So once you become qualified, you can sit there in the life of leisure, read CT scans with a cup of coffee you so choose. That was taken out my retirement and not quite true. So let's Let's talk about opportunities outside of being a physician. This is an extremely valuable job and an opportunity for many. Mike and I could not work as radiologists if it weren't for the technologists that support us. What is a technologist? They are the people who take the x-rays. They're known as radiographers, and they provide patient services, utilize the imaging modalities at the request of physicians qualified to prescribe and or perform. He or she performs radiologic procedures, applies principles of radiation protection, evaluates radiographs for quality, utilizes his or her professional judgment, and provides patient care. And you can find employment in hospitals, clinics, offices, industry, and private health facilities. And the beautiful aspect about this job, it is universally transferable around North America and Europe. The only problem may be some type of license or qualification. So what does it take to become a technologist? I've listed the educational requirements here at Salt Lake Community College, and there's also training possible at Weber State, which I'm a little bit more familiar with, but they have outreach programs including Provo. So I'll leave that up for just a second should you be interested. Okay, so if you go to Salt Lake Community College, what must you complete to advance on the course to become a technologist? And I've listed them there. I don't need to read them for you, but math, English, biology, and then an introductory course in radiology with appropriate grades. Successful completion of the program here and at Weber leads to an Associate of Applied Science degree, and the program is appropriately accredited. You can't move today in the field of medicine without accreditation. Hell, you can't be a bank teller without accreditation. Okay, so what type of compensation are we talking about? Approximately $25,000 to start, and working up to about $75,000 and beyond with appropriate seniority and advanced training to run an MRI machine or CT. That's obviously not going to happen in the first day, but okay, so what if you want to keep going? You can become a radiology practitioner, assistant, or radiologist assistant. So you have to have 3 years as a technologist, a recommendation from a physician such as myself or Mike, a healthcare facility which will allow you to complete the clinical requirements, and he or she is a health professional certified and registered as a radiographer and is credentialed to provide primary radiological health care services with a physician supervisor. And why is this valuable? This is valuable because you can bill. You can add value to the system. You have to have a master's degree, but once you can bill, you are of great value to the physician. So here's some websites that may be of interest to you. And this will be copied, this lecture. So, okay. So here's the requirements at Weber. 3 years experience, as we talked about, certification as a technologist, a Bachelor of Science degree, and 5 semesters of class with 20 morning sessions at Weber State, and online classes are available throughout the state. So let's say you don't want to be a technologist. It takes radiographs, but you'd like to work in ultrasound. So here are the requirements at Weber. You can also get training at Dixie. Weber State requirements. Associate, bachelor's, or master's degree possible. You need an associate degree in applied science and radiological technologist. In other words, you have to go through that basic course, become a technologist. Then you need certification, and now you can pursue either of several tracks. You can pursue a medical track and image the body, the breast, obstetrical care, or another track is predominantly cardiac imaging. The medical track includes such areas as abdominal sonography, obstetric, vascular, and now breast ultrasonography. The cardiac track is an extensive focus only on heart imaging, and both tracks require 4 semesters to complete. And the compensation is similar to what I described. Okay, other major areas of study at Weber: nuclear medicine, utilizing radioisotopes. Perhaps many of you may have had a radionuclide scan. Radiation therapy, and then advanced radiological sciences with emphasis on cardiovascular and interventional technique, utilizing catheters, which we can open and close blood vessels, we can drain abscesses, we can do some amazing tumor control. Magnetic res imaging, I suspect probably a third of this audience has already had an MRI, probably on their back. Women's imaging, which is self-explanatory, and quality management, if you are so inclined in looking at management. And women's imaging has its emphasis on mammography, breast sonography, and bone densitometry. Okay, I've described at least opportunities in medicine and paramedical-related opportunities. There is a huge problem, and this is where I'm going to focus my lecture. What's the problem? There are 7 to 9 applicants for every position in medical school. There are 30 to 40 qualified applicants for the 16 to 20 medical track positions in ultrasonography open every year at Weber State. Similarly, there are 18 applicants for the 6 to 10 positions open in cardiac ultrasonography, and there were 220 applicants at Weber State for the 50 positions to become a radiology technologist. There was a 5-year waiting list when someone came to me and says, Dr. Jaffe, I've had it, I've been in IT for 8 years, I want to become a technologist. It was a 5-year waiting list for him. Now Weber State has changed it, and you can rise based on your qualifications. In other words, if you're a top student, perhaps here or elsewhere, you won't have to wait that length of time. So when I heard these numbers, I was somewhat overwhelmed, and it was kind of discouraging to encourage Ben or Randy or Brenda to enter that program. And I said, well, there's got to be some understanding of how this works. So I called Dr. Diane Kamimura, who's the Dean of Radiological Sciences at Weber, and I says, geez, Dr. Kamimura, 200 some applicants for 50 positions, how do you choose them? Do you choose them the way Mike and I chose our residents? We stood at the top of the stairs, we threw the papers down, and the ones that landed, we chose them. She says, no, no, no. She said, I choose them based on quality, quality, quality. And that's pretty much the focus of my lecture. So how to distinguish yourself, or how to be one of the chosen few for whatever field that you choose to enter. So I'm going to provide 4 suggestions that I hope are of use to you. The first is, some may have acquired this early, some may have acquired it now, and some may never acquire it, but time management and organization is key. A number of you are probably single parents. Many of you are probably holding down a job. Some of you like video games. Some of you like recreational sports. Some of you are probably up to your fanny in classes. How do you do it all? It's time management and organization. When I went to school, I had a list. I had as much fun writing them down, but more fun crossing them off. Today, on your iPad, your tablet, whatever, your smartphone, there are a myriad of time management organization programs. Some will record this lecture or other lectures. We'll even have, with voice recognition, we'll transcribe it for you or come close to it. But you can utilize such programs to record your notes or organize your time. I would strongly recommend, if you do not have a time management organization program, that you at least look into it and obtain one. Or it can be just as simple as writing down what needs to be done immediately and what needs to be done a little bit more in the distant future. Anticipation. Need to pause here and tell you a story. It was in the late 70s
I was at Primary Children's Medical Center long before the days of the modalities that we have, MRI and CT, and I'd made the diagnosis of an abdominal tumor in a young girl, and the surgeon called me to the operating room to view it. And usually when a surgeon calls to the operating room, one of two things goes on. You are dead wrong, and he or she's politely going to show it to you and why you're wrong, or you're right, and he or she wants to compliment you, and in this case it was the latter. And I went up and I got all scrubbed in, and I watched a surgeon who had just come back from Poland. And he was the chief surgeon at Primary Children's. And as he was operating, he had his loops on, 10 power magnification. And he was operating, he says, and then we went over to this restaurant, and he held out his hand, and bam, there was an operative instrument. And he did this, and then we went over here, bam, bam, bam. The guy never said a word for 20 minutes. He just held out his left hand, and Sue, his operating room nurse for 15 years, bam, there was an operative instrument. And I said, holy cow, she knows his every move. And I said, my technologists do not know my every move. I went back to my office, put my feet up on the desk, and I said, I have to train my technologist to keep me out of trouble before I get into trouble. And I spent the next 30 to 40 years working on that premise. And of the 7 people that I work with really closely, only 2 people really got it. Now, why is that important? Well, I'm working on children at times the size of teenagers like you, but more often the size, just going to travel, of a premature infant about the size of this water bottle. 2 kilos, or about 4 pounds, or even less. And they're anesthetized, and they got breathing problems, and you're having technical problems, and you can only focus so many places at one time. And that's why you are so dependent upon your ancillary help. And those men and women that work with me eventually learn to say, Dr. Jaffe, we need to pause for a minute. The breathing is slowing, and we need to take care of the breathing. Don't wait till they're pumping on the kid's chest. So I talked to my son, who went to business school, about anticipation. He says, Dad, that's about the first thing they teach you in Business 101. If you cannot anticipate the next 3 questions when you are interviewing and working business, you are already behind the 8 ball. So I think anticipation, it was very important for me, and I think it might be important for you in anything you do. Anticipate what Dr. Lambert's going to do here for you on your final test. Is he going to review lectures from the last week, or find out his pet peeves, or what his great love is? I guarantee you it'll be on the test. It won't be on fly fishing either. Anticipation. Develop unique skill sets. You can never be overtrained, and you do make your own luck. And one of the great joys of being, I'll use the term teacher, since 1970, is to see the young men and women that I have trained and others have trained rise to their levels today in positions of management and expertise. There is no better example than my new daughter-in-law. Mike and I just came back from New York. My son, the baseball writer, works for Sports Illustrated. His wife is senior baseball editor for Sports Illustrated and also did NBA basketball. She started off, she had good training. She's a Yale graduate in English. She started off at a little tiny newspaper, and over the years she went from one newspaper to another, and her editing skills, she eventually rose to the position where she is now as a senior baseball editor. There is that Peter principle that you probably all know in business, where you rise to your level of incompetence, and hopefully that'll never happen to you. But you can never be overtrained. If there's an opportunity to get additional training in whatever area that is interested to you, I say obtain it. You can never know when it will be of value to you. Remember, Randy, you're competing with the 2 gentlemen to your right and the 2 women to your left for whatever position that you were going after.
You need to be one of the, quote, chosen few. And you do make your own luck. Lastly, and I never had this opportunity, is networking. Networking in the era that I grew up consisted of going to the bar with Mike and having a drink of our choice. There was not social media. According to what I find on the internet and according to my two sons, about 60 to 70% of human resource officers, or whatever you prefer to call them, that are going to hire you are going to look at what you have on social media. And my suggestion to you, ladies and gentlemen, is you want to have a picture of yourself passing out relief supplies in Haiti or Bombay, and not that picture of you hanging upside down on the freeway sign in your boxer shorts with a can of beer in your hands. They'll find it. I guarantee you they'll find it. So remember, have only on your social media sites only what you want others to view as you advance in your career. So, in summary, the four things that relate to you and as you advance in your career, from schooling to levels of work and hopefully higher, time management and organization. That's the key to how you plan your day, your week, your month, and your year. If you think it's going to take another class in computer management for you to rise to the next level, take it. Take it at night school, take it at Phoenix, take it at Salt Lake Community College, take that class. You have to distinguish yourself and develop that unique skill set to identify to that HR individual why it's you they want to hire. Anticipation we described. Anticipate what Mr. Lambert's going to nail you with next week. Networking, self-explanatory. Don't be hesitant.
Who has,
What special skill sets did you develop to set yourself apart from the competition as very competitive?
Mm-hmm. The question is, what unique skill sets did I develop to advance? I started in the summer of my first year in medical school looking for a job, and the job, I thought I wanted to be a radiologist, and I was able to obtain a summer job with a grant from the University of Washington School of Medicine, and became interested in cardiac imaging. And I learned cardiac imaging at a time that it was very poorly covered. And that turned out to be a huge success. Many of you probably were born long after the Vietnam War, but as a physician, and we're going to digress for a minute, but I'll show you how that was valuable. I was very interested in cardiac imaging and became adept at it. And the Vietnamese War required that all physicians go into the service. And with a little bit of luck, my next door neighbor was 1 year ahead of me, said, Dick, he said, what are you going to do to stay out of the service? I said, what do you mean, George? He said, Dick, if you don't have a plan when you come out of medical school, you're going to Vietnam. George, what are you doing? He says, I applied for and got a job with the FDA. And so I looked into it. And the short of it is I interviewed at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland in October of 1965. And the head of the department, a woman, eventually after talking with me and found my area of expertise was in cardiac imaging, picked up a clipboard and said, I need a cardiac imager in July of 1970. I said, 1 year more medical school, 3 years residency. I said, I'd like that job. That job was available to stay out of Vietnam. There were 300 applicants for every position at the NIH. And I was fortunate because of the unique skill set to nail one of those jobs. And a while back at the NIH, I learned how to manage catheters.
And I also was very interested in child's imaging, and I learned that. I came to the University of Utah here after my stint in Malaysia teaching, and I was offered a job at the University of Utah in cardiac imaging. But that job kind of went south with the advent of coronary imaging, and because of my interest in cardiac imaging, particularly congenital heart disease, and my ability to handle catheters and not be scared of little tiny premature infants, I was asked to join the staff at Primary Children's. So I have been able, yes, I was at the right place at the right time, but with the right skill set. Don't mean to toot my horn, but the key was that I continued to learn, and it so happened that it was kind of like fitting a jigsaw puzzle. I was what they needed at the time at Primary Children's Medical Center. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Fire away.
When did you retire from Primary Children's?
203. I wanted to do some volunteer work in the city, and I've had an opportunity to teach in third world countries. I've been to China 3 times, Guatemala, and anybody know where Ulaanbaatar is? Mongolia. Let me tell you, you don't know how good you have it sitting here as opposed to Ulaanbaatar. I lectured in a hall that must have been built by the Russians in 1940. The medical care is primitive, although I understand recently. But to be an American student today with the access that you have to the internet is indescribable compared to third world countries that I've been at. China's rather amazing, and you're going to have to stay on your toes to stay out of China. It's beyond my capabilities. But other questions? Yes, Mike.
Just a comment in regards to the medical training that Dick mentioned from, say, ultrasonography and radiographic technology. The technology that we were studying and also at University College is very good. I was on the clinical teaching staff for this and Weaver State. And we ran technologists through. And the applications, many of the applications that don't get accepted is not that the students are poor. It's that they don't have the facilities to handle the volume. When we were running radiographic techs over at Pioneer, I was the chief of radiology at Pioneer. We had been together at the University of Utah. I left the university and came here. I'm currently on the board of Jordan Valley and Pioneer. We would run about 4 techs. They have, and this is diagnostic radiology, and then we'd also run ultrasonographers. The Weaver State's criteria is very high. You have to be certified in general radiology before they accept you into the ultrasonography field. To be qualified in ultrasonography, you have to pass the test in physics, and then you do the subset training, and abdominal, OBGYN, etc. The quality of the techs are very good. It's not easy training because you spend a lot of time, and the job is demanding too. I mean, there's people work nights, days, almost as much as the radiologist Sunday. They spend a lot of time. It's nice. When we drop back to the military days, when the doctor's draft was different than the regular draft, you could be drafted as a physician up to age 35. And with that, I got on a program for the military. And I ended up in the Army in Germany for 3 years. But they could have sent you anywhere. And the Navy had it, Air Force had it. And so that brings up one of the issues. To go to school here or to Weaver State, there's other avenues. You can join the military. You can look at their programs. When the doctor's draft ended, there was no way for the military to get positions. So they've made their own medical school. It's in Bethesda. And so they have these programs. And you can go and train, and, well, you can go to medical school. You can do it all. They have the whole thing. And you can be paid instead of having to, pay to be taught. So there are other avenues. These 2 institutions, as I mentioned, are not the only pathway. And one thing I don't think I ever hired a radiology or ultrasonography tech for $24,000. I think they were a lot higher than that.
Those are the numbers I got for compensation. Mike's brought up a very interesting point, and that is for those people that would like to take advantage of the military, and I should really add that on there. Generally, to go to any military required, training program, and there are also others that are not military, it is generally one for one. What do I mean by that? It means that they'll pay for you to go to school, but after you've spent 4 years with them, you owe them at least 4 years in return. And there are ways to get grants to go to medical school, but I can guarantee you, if you go through one of those programs, they want to send you to rural Utah. They're not going to send you on, put you in office at South Temple. They want you down in Blanding, Bluff, Hurricane. That's the only way today. Unfortunately, there is not a problem with physicians in the United States. There's a problem with physician distribution. Most people, by the time they incur, and the medical school debt is pretty close now, averaging about $120,000 a year, don't want to live in, I'm not going to pick on Grantsville, but that's the name that comes to mind. You can at least come into Salt Lake, but it's very difficult for the men and women that come out of medical school with that huge debt to see themselves in rural Utah or rural Idaho and hope to be able to clear that debt. The Army generally has excellent programs, multiple in the country. I think there's 9 of them, but generally for every year that they provide training and financial compensation for you, you owe them at least a year in return. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, it was, and the program could change depending
Right.
on how they. But when you do that, you get a, that time counts for retirement.
Right.
And you
Good
get
point.
benefits.
That's right. Other questions? I see we have one with computer skills, Brenda. We have one with calligraphy skills, Kathy. Yes.
So
Are you Matthew?
Yeah, I'm Matt.
Matt, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh no, yeah, you're fine. So, are there any developing innovations in the technology with radiology?
You can't keep up with them.
That's almost daily.
Mike and I talk about. We trained in the late '60s, early '70s. Mike and I refer to our training as OTJ, on the job. Since I graduated, nuclear medicine has exploded. A CT scan, I listened to the gentleman from England. Do you know the first CT scanner was built by EMI, the company that had the record contract with the Beatles? I listened in 1972 to an individual from England by the name of Hounsfield talk about this thing better than sliced bread. And the woman who hired me, she says, well, how much does it cost? That's when the most expensive piece of radiological equipment that we owned, fluoroscopy equipment, cost about $100,000, and Dr. Hounsfield said, it's going to cost a little over $1 million. And she said, it'll never fly. Within 2 years, it had revolutionized the worldwide evaluation of neurologic disease. MRI. Mike and I had to go to class in the 80s to understand what we're talking about. Came back with crossed eyeballs. Could barely understand what was going on. MRI exploded in the 80s and 90s. Within 4 years, it completely had revolutionized body imaging. Today now, what you're seeing, interestingly enough, to answer your question, is what's called molecular imaging. You're now imaging at the level of at a molecular level, and we're going to pick on Kathy because I could read her nicely printed name tag. What, generally speaking, you're going to see medical care directed to Kathy's genome. When Kathy comes in, they're going to understand Kathy's genetic makeup, whether she comes from the Mediterranean, might be an Ashkenazi Jew, might be from Spain, might have some unique hereditary problems that relate to a zillion diseases, and be able to tailor-make her medical treatment, be it for whatever illness related to her genomic makeup. And radiology, right now, the biggest thing is, I was just talking to my colleagues who've replaced me,
Perhaps you guys remember Derek Fisher. Remember Derek Fisher, the basketball player for the Jazz, who bailed out because his child had a malignant eye tumor called a retinoblastoma? He went to New York, where they placed a catheter in the ophthalmic artery and infused chemotherapy to save the eye, whereas the standard treatment here at this time was removal of the eye, called enucleation. Well, they've just started that here at Primary Children's. I guarantee you that no matter what profession you get into, and medicine included, you're going to have a lot of OTJ training. And the field, radiology, always in the past years has always been able to attract the brightest men and women because, as they say, this may be somewhat derogatory, we had the toys. And we had the toys and they were very expensive. And today, men and women today that love technology, you know, you saw me reading in front of a computer screen, but we do 3D reconstruction. Let me just finish 1 second. When Mike and I first started to do a CT, the first CT, a CT was done like the slices of your loaf of Wonder Bread. Each slice took about 7 to 12 minutes to develop. So we wanted to do a head scan, which is about 13 scans, multiply that by 7 or 8 minutes. We used to sit there as these slices came up like this. Now you have multi-detector, we can image your whole body in 1 second. Your whole body from stem to stern in 1 second. Generally speaking, not your whole body, from about your neck down to your pelvis in 1 second. Which is great for kids. Mike.
I'll just make a comment. In regards to our training, I think one of the holes in it was the business aspect. We were so slotted in the technology and biological sciences, and it really took a lot of work. I mean, I did my pre-med in 3 years, and I went summer, condensed it all, and got my bachelor's degree my first year of medical school. I was on a fast track. The problem I had as we move off into the field of radiology, and you have your own corporation, et cetera, your business acumen has really got a hole in it. I mean, I wish I could read a flow sheet better. I wish I could accounting better. I went through all that. I had to depend on other people. So from the field that we talk about radiology, people that come up and have a business aspect in this other technology, they can branch out. They don't have to stay in this. They can be the entrepreneurs of the radiologic field. I mean, I saw guys that, you know, when I was buying CT scanners from GE, I was dealing one time with 2 salesmen. I said, well, you're salesmen. No, these guys were Texas A&M graduates in electrical engineering, and they were going to go up the ladder, but they had all those qualifications. But from my personal perspective, the business aspect was a major hole. But once you get down that track, you can't reverse it.
Many physicians are taking the weekend class at Wharton. I think they fly out Thursday night, come back Sunday to learn what Mike is talking about, the business aspect, the management aspects. If you rise to your level of head of the newborn ICU, you have probably 15 physicians under you, about 35 to 50 nurses. You got respiratory therapists. You need organization and management skills. And Mike's not, and that's a whole different aspect about, do you lease, do you buy? Let me tell you, when you go and you're responsible, as I was, for the purchase of 4 CT scans at $2.6 million a piece, you better have some good understanding of discounts. And whether that, pardon my French, where that damn machine works. Because you can be sure if it doesn't work, you got a few buddies who'll tell you about it. So Mike's on the right point. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, no problem. I was just wondering when the molecular imaging will come, like, to the market.
It's here today.
It is?
It's here today. Most evident at the Moran Eye Center, where they're looking at individuals with hereditary retinitis pigmentosa. But molecular imaging is here today in its infancy. Let me just give you an example. Who will pick up? Ben's there. I can read Ben's name tag. Ben comes in, brings his little son into Primary Children's Medical Center. And this is the beauty of living in Utah. Ben brings his son in and he's got disease XYZ. And the doctor talks to Ben and says, anything similar in the family? And Ben says, well, my aunt had this, and possibly I heard remotely that my great uncle may have had it. The next place they go is they draw blood. and they run the chromosome analysis. And the next place they go, it's what's called the Utah Population Database. What is that? Those are the LDS records that go back 5 generations. It so happens that our close friend, Jerry Minot, ran that, and it's very, very tightly controlled. But when you have the family history, they will go in and look at that population base. They will find every relative that relates to that family. They will draw his or her blood if they can get it, take a history. They will isolate the break in the chromosome where that base is. They will then take that chromosome, let's say it's chromosome 23p25, which is a very common one for congenital abnormalities. They will take that up to the research center, where they will knock out on a Sprague-Dawley mouse that genetic locus for that abnormality and see what they can do, see if it reproduces the problem, and then they will work for a cure. They will load up a virus, an adenoma virus, and this is where cystic fibrosis. They will load up an adenoma virus and try and get it into your bloodstream or even stem cells, and try and provide the jigsaw puzzle that fits that link. So they've been working on cystic fibrosis now for about 15 years, and they can't get enough of the chromosome in through the adenovirus, which is just a common virus. So yes, molecular imaging is here, and molecular therapy is here, and that's where the therapy will be directed. You will be reading about that even in the Tribune.
How far have they come with like mental illness?
Mental illness, I can tell you the mental illness, I can't talk about the treatment, I can talk about the imaging. Almost all individuals with mental illness now get an MRI, and there is a special imaging center on in Research Park that all the children with autism are imaged multiple times, and those people that have seizures are imaged, and the 2 machines, you can now do an EEG, electroencephalogram, localize the focus of the seizure, and utilize computer technology. You can marry them exactly to the CT scan, so you know within a sub-millimeter where that abnormal focus is with the EEG and the CT scan, and the same thing with tumor imaging. If you are unfortunate enough to have a tumor and they're looking for a recurrence, you will have a PET scan, positron emission tomography. They will give you oxygen 16 or 18, or glucose. They'll give you something that will be taken up by the tumor, and it will be bright on a scan. They will do a simultaneous CT scan. The 2 are married within sub-millimeter level, and you will be able to see, in a CT scan, it may be a myriad of circles and this and that, but when you overlay the 2, you can see exactly where that hot spot is. The surgeon, he or she, can go and remove it, or they can direct the chemotherapy. The technology today with computers is absolutely amazing. And I can tell you, we have 4 IT people alone in the Department of Radiology. When my computer goes down, it's like a pig looking at a wristwatch. I need an IT person. So the CT scans today, as I told you, taken in 1 second, are all sliced like a loaf of Wonder Bread. They're all sub-millimeter. But utilizing a workstation, you can construct that CT scan. The slices are taken like this way. We can construct it like this. We construct it like this. You construct it. Do you understand when I talk about the X, Y, and Z planes? You can construct it obliquely in any which way. So to answer your question, any child or adult with mental illness is imaged today by MRI, and they will also have PET imaging, etc.
In the field of brain chemistry, though, we're in our infancy. We're looking at anatomical changes and correlating it with mental illness and physical changes. But brain chemistry, we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
There's no serotonin imaging. Other questions? Largest class, but smallest number of questions. What does that mean? Okay, time management.
You've done a great job.
No. Time management, anticipation, unique skill sets, networking. Get rid of those not useful images on your social media. Thanks for your attention, folks.
How many of you think that Dr. Jaffe retired in 2003? I don't either. And he keeps the saw sharp, but anticipation is a great tool for you as you figure out what you want to be. Let's give Dr. Jaffe one more hand, and Mike as well.